We'll go ahead and get started. Don't need to keep everybody any longer. I'm sure everybody's got enough to do. Um, I guess the reason for this meeting is we just wanted to make sure, try and get, I know we've had a few meetings with ESUs and coding, and it's just been a challenge to kind of get everybody on the same page. And we thought maybe a good way to um, start to get a little better about that across the state is to just have a meeting with all those that are involved with cooperatives. Um, we at the department have had a couple conversations in the last couple of weeks trying to get on the same page and make sure that we're handling both the consortiums and the cooperatives correctly. I like to tend to get those mixed up and then tell people the wrong thing. So this was an opportunity to make sure that we're giving the same message and everybody's on the same page. So I guess with that being said, we don't have a fancy program or PowerPoint or anything like that prepared, at least not that I know of. Um, but we'll kind of go over some of the, I think, key things that maybe get confused from time to time. And then at any time, if you have questions, want to, stop or have some input, we're definitely open to hearing that and or answering those questions. And for the NDE people that are on here, feel free to jump in anytime to help me out if I get off track or aren't saying things correctly or not clearly. So I guess with that, I'll start by saying uh, in our conversation that we've been having about the cooperatives and how specifically the federal reimbursements are handled when we got a cooperative involved, we think what basically how school districts have been coding things has probably been done correctly, where schools need to code the expenditures to the correct federal program account code. And then when they're reimbursed, it'll also show up in the same federal revenue account code as they normally would do, whether it was a cooperative or not. Their accounting records will probably look the same for those school districts. Again, whether they're in a cooperative or if they're just handling it up by themselves. The ESUs is where there's going to be a little bit of difference. One of the issues that we have and have struggled with a little bit is where when we do reporting to the federal government, um, we end up with a lot of double counting where school districts recognize a federal revenue and then the ESUs recognize a federal revenue. And so we report that to the federal government because we report both the ESU and school districts because sometimes it's just goes to one or the other. And so for us to figure out um, which shouldn't be double counted or which should be pulled out is next to impossible. So keep that in mind, I guess, as we talk about how we think ESUs should be recording these transactions. So essentially, when an ESU then that's doing the administration for a cooperative um, makes their payment out to the school districts, your payments are going to be probably coded. And when you make your application, if I'm correct in understanding the application process shouldn't really change. You're going to be still recording those in the appropriate function codes, but also object codes, whether that be salaries, benefits. So 100s, 200s, 300s, so on. You're probably familiar with that. Those school district salaries, where this is actually school district money, you're just handling the administration for it, is going to go ahead and it's going to be still in the hundreds. So when a school district is using their federal money from that is part of your cooperative to pay salaries or benefits, that should show up as 100 and a 200, not a 300 as a contracted service. If when they report that to you, it's going to show up that way on their books. You would keep it the same way when you then submit your reimbursement request to us. So it's going to show up as expenses in those same corresponding function and object codes as the school district has. This is where the change is probably going to be from what we've maybe said in the past. And that's so when you get your reimbursement request from us, we think that the most appropriate way for that to be handled is to be an offset to those expenses. So basically a negative expense. What that does then is essentially that will wipe out the in and the out, since it's just a pass through for the ESU. It's not really your income, it's not really your expense. it wipes it out. And then when we report that to the federal government, we don't over report that. If there's an administration portion of that money that you're getting from the schools to take care of that administration part, that will be recorded separately, and should still be recognized as a revenue and expense and shown separately from the grant. So that's kind of the big change in how we think that should be recorded. And that's definitely different than a consortium. So if you do have those going on, we're just talking about cooperatives today. If you do have those going on, we'll need to have another discussion on that. So don't handle those the same way as far as that recording goes. So I'm going to give you a chance to ask some questions on that, or let Tom jump in and talk about your response. So the other big part to this that we talked a lot about is your responsibility then as a pass-through entity with those funds. So maybe I'll let Tom jump in, and then we'll give you guys a chance to ask some more questions.
Hi, it's Tom Geschel. We've created a new department within Department of Education called Fiscal Review, and this is my first year kind of going through this. So this will be new to you as it is new to me as well. So when you accept these funds as a cooperative and you are then sub-granting these funds to the school districts, you basically become like NDE. You are the sub-awardee, and you are sub-awarding to a sub-recipient to carry out part of a federal program. What comes with that is, as a pass-through entity, is which you become, you are required to issue a sub-award to each one of those school districts you give money, do a risk assessment, and issue any specific conditions that may apply. You're also required to monitor these school districts, as we would come out and monitor you as well. You need to inform them of their audit requirements. You need to look at their audits and their monitoring, and then the results of those. Did it result in any non-compliance you need to follow up on? I'm going to try to get out to some ESUs this fall, as long as COVID remains in control. And we could go over these a little bit further then. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
I have one question on the, to do the sub-award and stuff like that. Do we use the same CFI number and stuff that we are given in our grant application for their?
The CFDA number? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, CFDA.
It would be the same number. That number doesn't change. That's how we report grants up to the federal level. So whatever you could basically use our award as a template and just change some of the things in there.
For our co-op, we do like a annual budget sheet, and we show them what monies they're getting and how to code it and how it's broke up and stuff like that. Can we just put a blanket paragraph on those budget sheets and give it to each one of our districts as the award notice?
I'm not following you. I'm sorry.
Well, like our GAN that we get from our application, when we do the application, can we just do kind of a, like I said, a blanket paragraph that it's the same for all of our districts in our co-op, and it references the CFDA number and stuff like that, and it's just attached to that budget sheet that we give each district separately every year?
No, because there's specific requirements you need to explain to them what is required of them per 2 CFR 200-331. There's like 13 different requirements in there you need to make aware of each of your sub-recipients.
Tom, did you mention earlier that we may have a draft?
I believe I do have a template I could send out.
I'm guessing that would be helpful to all of you.
That would be very helpful.
So, Tom, is
Yes.
this like the compliance supplement like our auditors were due to us, where you like go through and check on like the procurement, all the ones earmarking or all of those things that apply to us when our auditors audit us?
Correct. Maybe not as in depth as like earmarking and anything like that, but your subrecipient monitoring based on their risk assessment, you would have to do a risk assessment on each one of your entities. Could be anywhere from, yeah, you'll dig that deep to MOE to earmarking to things like that, or it might just be looking at a sample of their expenditures because you feel that they are very low risk and they have done a good job in the past. So there's not much risk there.
Tom, if they don't want, can they avoid the risk assessment if say it's a small, very small amount and there's only a couple of expenditures, could they just do 100% check on
Sure.
expenditures?
Yeah,
and then
you sure
avoid
could
the
do.
risk
Yeah, you could
assessment?
avoid the risk assessment and just say, no need to do a risk assessment because we're going to test 100% of the $1,000.
Yeah, and then I think in a lot of cases, you guys actually it would be way simpler to just do that when we're talking small amounts and not a lot of checks or documents to review.
I think most of them are paying staff salaries and benefits. So that's the majority of them are using it for.
So then are we still required, when we send in our reimbursement requests, we have to collect the accounting reports and stuff from the school districts, and then we send that along as documentation to NDE when they audit our reimbursement request? We're still required to do that then, because NDE is auditing us and them? Or I guess I'm getting confused at when Tom said we have to audit our co-op districts, but then when we send in that documentation, basically NDE is auditing that documentation also. So it's like 2 audits are going on for the district, maybe?
Tom, you want that one, or you want me to take it?
I can take it. You can help me out if I get stuck, but no, you are correct. So it would be your responsibility to review the documentation to make sure that the school district has all their proper documentation in row for you to make that reimbursement to them. Currently, per our discussion, we are still requiring for you to send the documentation to us, but we're going to be doing a less of a review as we've done in the past, to lessen the burden on you.
Okay.
What I would say, Carolyn, we're in the process. We've had a couple of audit findings on our review process, and that's what Tom's office was created to handle and fix. And they are in the process of finalizing that, how that's going to look. And so we are anticipating that it's going to change, and it's likely that we won't require that documentation down the road. And what will be done instead is Tom and his group will be coming out and doing checks, basically what the federal government does to us, where we don't send everything to them, but then they come out and then they do their audits at times, and we'll handle that then. So for the moment, we don't want to tell you one thing and change it on you a couple months down the road. So we're going to say, keep doing what you've been doing as far as sending that documentation in for now. And once that process is all finalized and we know exactly what it's going to look like, we'll let you know so that we don't change things on you again in a couple weeks or months or whatever.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Did I get that right, Tom, or was I want to make
No,
sure?
that sounds right up. That sounds what we discussed with Steve. So
Okay.
There will be a different process in the future. That process has not been finalized. And I will eventually get to all subrecipients, but it is going to take me about 3 years, and we've made it to about 67 this year via desk reviews. We're not traveling because of COVID.
Okay.
So let me just clarify then, the documentation that we send in with our request for reimbursement for Title I specifically is my concern, is going to be the same. Nothing's changed with that yet,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Good question.
Okay, can I jump ahead a little bit to what our audit report will look like then?
Yep.
So if we're going to be doing an in and out of the revenues and expenditures, basically our Title I revenue in particular will be very small. And then our expenses, which go on the CFA, will then also be very small, or will we have to put them in the pass-through to sub-recipients column on the CFA?
You're not going to show much at the end of the day. Like the final report that's put together in your financial statements is not going to show much for expense or revenue when it's with the cooperative dollars. Just the amounts essentially that you are getting for the administration of that amount. Now there'll be some timing issues on that. It might look a little funky occasionally at year end because of, an expense being in one year and a revenue being in the other. But we talked about that, and we feel like that can be reconciled pretty easily through the records that are submitted for reimbursement requests.
So some years we would have a net expense and some years we might have a net revenue. I'm just trying to think from our auditor standpoint, how they're going to enjoy reconciling that in and out account.
Yeah, well, I mean, they should be able to follow it, the transaction history on it. This is really consistent with how basically the guidance in like our users manuals and stuff and what we have school districts do. Anytime there's a reimbursement type of situation or just like a pass through, we have them coded the same thing. Otherwise you end up with overstated revenues and expenditures. Again, at the state level, we then report, if it's not done this way, we're going to end up reporting the federal revenues twice, both when we do the school districts, when we add their AFR information to the ESU's AFR information, it's going to look like we got more federal revenue and more federal expenditures than what we really had. So yeah, it will, but in all reality, it wasn't really ever your revenue or expenditure to start with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's a federal, obviously, if it's not involved in a cooperative and it's a federal grant going directly to you guys, that should be showing up on there.
It could push some people out of the single audit requirements because their expenditures aren't going to be as high anymore.
That's a good thing.
Well, yeah, it's not a bad thing, but it's definitely going to look different when the auditors come out next year.
Yeah, I guess so. They might be questioning the difference, and you have to just point them to the direction from NDE. Blame us.
We will.
Yeah, right. For the rest of my NDE group, what else am I miss? Anything else that Tom and I haven't hit on that we needed to discuss? Okay. Just out of curiosity, for my own sake, for all you that are doing cooperatives, do many of you also are you involved in consortiums as well? A lot of you are. Okay. So we'll have to would we be talking about doing this meeting again with the consortium group, Beth? Is that kind of what we were thinking we needed to do?
We can. I can schedule something again.
Would that be helpful to you that are involved in consortiums to then go kind of have a similar, not a long meeting, just a short meeting to talk through how the accounting and applications and everything should be handled with those?
So is it basically the same thing for the consortiums then, you're saying, Bryce, that you need to offset your expenditures and stuff like that in a consortium? No. Okay.
No, it's different. That's why I didn't want to get into it in this meeting, because then I don't want to confuse everybody.
If it's different,
I-
I would say yes, we need another meeting.
Well, we'll see. I'll see if Beth, if you'd be willing to set something up for that, maybe in a couple weeks or something like that.
I can send out a survey again because there'll be more schools or more ESUs in the consortium
Okay.
or in the cooperative. Yeah, consortium. Yes.
All right. Any other questions for us?
Changes, are they on the website, on NDE's website, or are you guys, is that the template you were talking about sending out that will kind of just like note the different things just so that we can have it to reference?
The changes in how the account, how you guys should be counting.
Yes, I think that would be helpful just so that we can make sure that we're doing it the right way.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything on our website that's discussing this at all. I'm thinking maybe, I don't know the best way. We'll talk about the best way to try and put a document together on that. I did mention that when we were talking earlier that we probably need to have something broke out. To be honest, for my own purpose, when I start talking about cooperatives and consortiums, I got to go back and think about it every time. And maybe on the ESU's users manual might be a good place for us to have some kind of breakout or summary of how cooperatives and consortiums should be handled. I don't know, maybe the Beth or you guys would have a better place for it, but we can talk about that and try and put something together.
I can also email it to everybody that's on this because I have a list of everyone that responded they'd be on the call.
And at that same time, is that when Tom was going to send out a draft or a template of the award notice? Could that be all on the same email?
Yeah, I'll send that information to Beth along with the 2 CFR requirement, and then she can send that to you all together, if that works.
That would be great. That way we can just reference one email instead of several.
Yep, we'll try to get that out within the week.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Let's back up there just a second. We don't have anything put together on the cooperative or cooperative type of consortium stuff. So I want to make sure if we put something out that we do that correctly and right. I don't want to, it might be a little bit before I get that done.
Okay.
So trying to get all your ESU AFR stuff fixed and ready so you guys can upload those at the moment. So.
And this,
Well, don't wait until next June.
And we just get another audit finding.
It feels like that's when it might get done. So at this point.
but this all starts with the 2021 application, correct?
Yes.
And I guess, and so the key to that is that the application will
Opens
be
next
same.
Tuesday.
Opens
At
next Tuesday, but it should be the same, right, Beth?
Yes.
Yep. So no big changes there for you. All right. I don't have anything else unless somebody else has a last question.
Bryce, I would like to reiterate that I think it would be great if you had something for the NDE title consortiums too. We started to go through a desk review and were asked for some things that we hadn't been asked for in the past. So we were wondering if there were new requirements that we weren't aware of. And so I think those might be some good things to cover, especially for those other ESUs that may not be aware of some of those things coming up.
In just regards to the consortium, those were new things you were asked for? Or, so I'd say, Tom, with Tom's kind of the change in the process there might be a lot of kind of different things that we're asking for here as we transition processes. But yeah, sure. We'll,
Okay.
Beth, I think, is like on top of scheduling that in a couple of weeks. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I think that's all I got.
Right. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.